All right, welcome back to Trapped Queens and Kings Combined. This custom position that I've created. This is my third video on this custom position, so I recommend that you watch the other two first, if you haven't already. The first video was an introductory video where I went over the main themes of the position, and I also showed many example games to illustrate those themes. In the last video, I went over a couple of sidelines in opening theory for the custom position. This video we're going to cover Ne3, which is an opening move that develops a knight and it aims to go to f5 and checkmate the opponent's king, which kind of more or less forces e6 off the bat. But basically the idea with Ne3 is that you want to attack your opponent's king even after e6. You're just going for the opponent's king. More common in the main line with most of the theory is going to be knight c3, but this video is going to cover Ne3. So Ne3 it attempts to attack the opponent's king. So Ne3, by the way, rook f8 doesn't work. Rook f8 doesn't work. Actually, I was going to say knight is interesting because if the rook takes, if we take back, then this is actually checkmate. So it's checkmate with g4. So the idea is that after rook f8, we can't actually go knight f5, but after knight d5, after knight d5, we're going to go to c7, and we're going to win the opponent's queen. Or are we? Yeah, I guess this is another. There are a lot of lines that could be played in this position, because over here a knight d4 the computer seems to like as well. Yeah, so it appears that rook f8 is actually a very playable move over here. I don't have theory on this, but I'll have to develop some theory here. So yeah, this position is just is just extremely in depth with theory. There are a lot of long lines, and a lot of computer moves over here. So I guess the key thing is to have a general understanding of the position, which is why I'm going to be showing example games with the theory. So knight e3, e6, e6 blocks knight f5 check. We could play rook f8. I'd have to come up with a theory on that and post that in a future video. So right now we're going to go over knight e3, e6. Over here you can see the computer thinks black is better. However, white has one move which continues with their plan. So as you can see over here, the computer wants knight d1, which knight d1 just undevelops the knight back to the starting square. So if we were to continue with our plan, it's going to be rook takes a2. So rook takes a2 is the only move to continue with white's plan, and the idea is to attack the king with as many pieces as possible. So black's going to take back, and we're going to play queen d3. So the idea is now that we're threatening to take on d7. The idea is that if black were to play something like d5 over here, we're actually going to play queen takes d5. And the idea over here is that if black were to take back, we have knight f5 mate. So, is there any way to defend this pawn? There actually is not. The main line is knight c6 and queen takes d7. So therefore, and the reason why we want to win this pawn is because if let's say if black doesn't have these two pawns, right, the e7 pawn and the e6 pawn, then we have basically knight f5. Like the only thing blocking knight f5 is these two pawns, and the pawns kind of stop white's attack in the center. If the two pawns are gone, white can even play rook f1 or rook c1 and then to c5 or f5 and bring in the attack as well. But right now, a1 equals queen. Black threatens that, so we can't do it right away. But basically, without black's two pawns, our queen and knight in the center of the board could be overwhelming, and none of black's pieces are developed yet. So knight c6 black plays to develop it, and we play queen takes d7. And rook hf8 is the main move over here. So if we were to here shows another interesting thing. So if we were to play, let's say, rook a e8 to try and defend this e6 pawn, we can just play queen takes e6 and win the pawn anyways because this is mate again. So in this position, queen takes e6. So white is going to force the trade-off of both of black's pawns, which is why knight e3, rook takes a2 is the kind of the only logical continuation for white's moves, for white's opening theory, uh, and that is because it's illogical because white's going to actually end up winning those 2 pawns as well. So now white's attack on the king is even more threatening. And that's the whole idea behind knight e3. Rook takes a2 is to bring this queen into the middle of the board, and the queen is a monster in the middle of the board. But white is going to counterattack now with their pieces. So knight d4, it's played over here. Note that if rook f2, so rook f2 is a move to maybe try to win the e2 pawn and also put some pressure on white. White can play knight f5 check over here. Black is forced to give up the rook. And after g takes f5, you can see the computer is evaluating this as drawn. Note that there's no king takes h5 is the move here, but g4 is not checked. Is not going to be able to be played because after f6, white's queen covers that square. After f6, g takes f6, g7. So we're trying to promote our pawn. The knight goes to e7 to stop the promotion, and if we were to take the knight, then g4 is mate, so we can't take it. And this position is completely drawn according to the engine. White's queen is kind of stuck defending against g4 mate. Black's pieces are stuck defending against pawn promotion. And if we were to, if black was to do something like what's white's move right now, let's say the 2 moves queen g. So let's say e3 gets played. If yeah, then they can just promote. So there's nothing that can really be done in this position. And if white gets too ambitious, let's say white plays rook a1 trying to take the pawn, f5 can be played. And the idea is that g4 is now going to come with mate because the pawn also protects it and the pawn cuts off the queen. So after e3, e3 f5, this doesn't work anymore because we have queen f7 check, knight g6, queen takes f5. Just going back a bit, if rook a1, f5, why not queen f7 check, knight g6, queen takes f5. Oh, knight f4. So see that e3 needs to be played because now the queen's going to take over here, and black will be better. That's why e3 could be played in this position instead. So now I'm seeing after e3, rook g8 to win this pawn maybe. Rook a1 is a move as well. Once the rook takes a pawn and this rook takes this pawn, oh, now f5 works. So this is extremely tactical. We have to play. Oh, does white have to perpetual check maybe? King g6, e4. Yeah, this position is drawn, but it's completely playable for the human. Like easily, both sides could mess this up. That's the position that comes out of rook f2. The main move over here I have is knight d4 for black. It keeps even more complexity on the board. The idea over here is that queen e4 is played. Rook a d8 protects this knight on d4. And rook goes to a1. Knight takes on e2. So now the knight is threatening, so we can't play rook takes a2 because there's this knight g1 mate over here. So the idea here is that we have to play knight f5, check here. Now that the knight is moved, the rook takes. We take on f5, though I think we could also take on e2 as well. I'm wondering if we take on e2, this could still be a draw. Rook f4. Though I'd be worried about the rook taking on b4. Queen e7, rook a8. d4, rook c1. The queen blocks the b4, so black can't sacrifice over here, and this should be drawn. But as it is, we have the main line of the queen taking, so this actually makes the game like more complex. Queen takes f5, so that could also be a draw, which is why knight e3 is not the recommended choice, because if the main theory gets followed, there's a lot of drawn games. So white obviously is trying to play for an advantage out of the opening. This doesn't allow them to do that, but it's still very complex. So rook d4, so the same idea, black's trying to take on b4. You play rook f1, because we want to play queen f8 and checkmate the opponent's king on h8. So I'm wondering after rook d4. Oh yeah, that doesn't work because we have knight f4 check, and it's still supposedly drawn. Yeah, it's actually still drawn after this because um, because black can't do that much, because if black were to play something like rook d4, then rook e8, and and black's not fast enough because this is mate. So black can go to rook f8, and now the rooks will kind of just have to stay. Like white's rook will have to stay on the first rank, and black's on the 8th rank, and it'll just be mate. There's no way for black to sacrifice. So for example, if rook f8, rook c1, rook a8, rook f1. If takes, you would think that after here, black can just stop any mate from happening because the queen protects the rook, but we can just take. And now uh, the problem is that if the rook goes to the queen goes to d6 to try and stop rook f8, then we can promote to a queen and win that way. But and if the queen takes, we're faster. We're actually faster here by one move. H8 mate. So the rook can never sacrifice over here. So it's just a draw. Mm. So that's why over here we play rook f1, because now if we go queen f8, like let's say it's our move again, we'd win with queen f8, because after knight f4 check we can take with the rook. So this is interesting over here. So black has to promote, and the reason why black has to promote is to kind of like deflect the rook back to a1, and then black can play knight f4 check and force the queen to be traded. So if we look a couple moves before, it was if black had played knight f4 now, then the same idea, king takes h4, and well, rook d5 stops g5 from being mate, but the rook is gonna go to c8, and black can't go back to the 8th rank to block that because g5 is checkmate. So there's just too many threats and white wins. So that's why black couldn't do this at that move, and that is why black had to play rook d4 first and then had to promote to a queen, and that it deflects white's rook away. Then knight f4 comes, queen takes f4, rook takes f4, and it should be a draw. Rook e1, yeah, the rook has to go to f8, so what we talked about before, and white does have this d pawn that they can push, but they can't oh yeah, that's the other thing. So right now white has a d2 pawn. So if we follow all this theory, white is essentially, well, I mean, black is up a queen, but they can't free it at any point. Like with the same thing that I said, if the rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, then rook e8 is gonna mate black. So black can't do anything with their extra queen. So if we pretend like, if we just ignore everything on the A and B files, and everything on the G and H files, white is simply up a pawn. So let's see how white's going to promote this pawn and win. D4, A3. So A3 gets played, black just gives up their pawn. B takes A3, queen takes B6. So you might be wondering why this is the theory. Well, the idea over here is that if you remember from the introduction video, I said stalemate is a common problem, right? We haven't seen stalemate yet. We haven't seen any games or anything with a stalemate, and this is it. So white is having this extra pawn that they want to promote, and if black just moves their rook back and forth on the 8th rank, white's going to be able to promote. So white's going to be able to get the pawn to d7. So if you can imagine this pawn going to d5, d6, d7, and the rook going to e8, that is going to spell game over for black. So what black has to do is their only option is to give up all their pieces. So they play a3, and because this pawn is actually going to promote, white should just take it. And then queen takes b6. If white doesn't take it, then black wins. They have an extra queen, so white has to take that as well. So now after rook f1, you would think that white can like avoid taking these pieces that white is just sacrificing, but white's going to have to take these pieces. After rook f1, we have nothing better than to, well, if we take it right away, it's going to be mate. We could play a8 equals queen, but actually after rook h1 check, this is a stalemate. And so if we go all the way back, the only piece that we like when black played a3, that was the only thing that wasn't forced to give up, right? However, if we let white, let's black take on b2, for example, now black has this pawn, and let's just go back and forth a bit just to show. And then black will be faster over here. So white is going to have to win the pawn. So all these pieces that black gave up, white basically had to take them, and so that's where the stalemate comes. In this position, let's just show the main line from the beginning. So main line from knight e3, and just to recap it very quickly. So after knight e3, e6, rook takes, white won those 2 pawns. Black came in with the knight and the rook. It deflected white's rook away, gave up the knight. Rook went to e1 back, and after d4, white was going to win, and thus black came up with something. And black was able to come up with a3, b takes a3, queen takes b6, and was basically able to stalemate. If we look back, it would be very interesting. Like in none of this theory could black free their queen. So their queen on a6 remained trapped the whole game. If black was able to free their queen, maybe black would be winning, right? Because right now, if we went through all this theory and we saw that in all these lines it ends up in a draw at the end with knight e3, which is why I wouldn't recommend it. But I have one game where I played where we went through lots of theory. I didn't really play knight e3 really, so I have one game where I played it. It was in the final round of that tournament, Queens and Kings combined tournament, correspondence chess tournament that I created. And we followed quite a lot of theory in the game, because I think the theory for this knight e3 line is somewhat more intuitive than other lines. So we ended up following a lot of theory, and I was able to win the game because my opponent's understanding of the position, they tried to free their queen. So basically, we played some of the same theory that you're going to see here. I'm just going to go to the game right now, but black made a crucial error, and that's going to show. That's going to show. That's going to show. It's going to show the theory and why and why that's kind of like the forced way to play it. Okay, so in this game I played knight e3, e6, rook takes h2, we take queen d3, rook f8, queen takes d7. Okay, so as you can see, we reached this position. Okay, knight c6 could have been played. They played rook f8. That's fine. I took on d7. Same idea. And over here, they actually chose to sacrifice the a3 pawn right away, which is a very interesting decision. Sorry, the a4 pawn by playing a3. But yeah, they sacrificed that. So I took. That was an interesting decision. And they played Yeah, I think a3 was very interesting. They should have just played knight c6, but in the theory of this position, black sacrifices their pawn anyways, so they just changed the move order. Once I took, they played knight c6 then, queen takes e6, um, knight d4, queen e4, knight takes e2. So we're not exactly following the theory, but we're following like the same sort of idea. So as you can see over here, if you change the theory around over here, it's not drawn anymore. Now white is winning. So knight f5 check, rook takes f5, queen takes f5, and over here, well, it's actually not winning. Wait, yeah, so see, even the computer gets confused with this position because of the trap nature of the position. And very interesting over here is rook c8. Obviously, you can't take because there's going to be knight f4 checkmate, but the idea is that the rook is going to go to c4, and the theory idea with knight f4 check is going to happen. So you can see we're kind of still loosely following theory, and in this position it would be a draw as well. Which is why, because so many of these lines are drawn, I wouldn't recommend playing knight e3. But here's where the interesting thing happens. So black plays rook takes a7. So this is an extremely logical move. And the idea is that black is trying to free their queen. So in the theory lines of the position, black's queen was trapped in. I said if black's queen was free, that could be a deciding factor. So over here, black decides to free the queen. But here's why you probably shouldn't do that in this position. First, if I were to take, right, then over here, there is no checkmate from white because there's actually queen a8. So that's this is like the amazing nature of the tactics in this position. Extremely tactical complex because you can't take this or else there's knight f4 mate. So like everything's literally one move away from checkmate, which is why this position is so difficult to play. So over here the idea is that if the queen were to take on a7, then black's a2 pawn, the e2 knight and this queen, they're extremely strong pieces. Black should win this one. So, but after rook takes a7, I play queen e4. That's the best move. The idea is that I want to kick the knight out. Knight can't go to f4, otherwise the idea with g checkmate happens. So I kick the knight, and there's no place for the knight to go. So the knight is trapped. So queen e4 was good there. And I didn't want to take the rook because, as I showed, black's activity becomes too much there. And this knight is extremely like a thorn in my position. So over here, I'm able to take the knight. So that should be like a strategical win. So now what we do is we reach a position where we both have a queen and a rook, and I'm actually up 2 pawns. So now I have to convert this. But the key is that is that black can still try to go for a stalemate. Because remember, as in the initial lines, black had to go for a stalemate, and over here, because both of the kings are still trapped, black can like give up this pawn, this a2 pawn, and then they can give up their 2 pieces. So I have to watch out for that. So black plays rook d8, just trying to bring their pieces out. I played d3, queen e8, queen takes a2, and I let the rook take on d3 because I had to win the pawn, and if I were to do it right now, like without if I were to try to go play rook a1 and not give up the pawn, I think black could have maybe a stalemate idea. For example, maybe rook takes d3 probably doesn't work here. Yeah, it doesn't work. Queen c8. Well, now queen c1. Queen c1 is winning. So yeah, I decided to just take the pawn. Rook takes d3, and now the idea with this position is that I would like to play. I wanted to play a4 and then just takes, and then I play b5 and just bring my pawns forward. But the problem with this position is after something like b5, right? Um, Queen d7. I know that there has to be a stalemate somewhere. Yeah, see, for example, rook a3, if I were to go to B4, so queen goes to D2 there. But yeah, over here there's lots of stalemate ideas. For example, um, queen C1 over here, and it's going to be a stalemate. So what I ended up doing instead in this game was, in order to win the game, I played A6. And the idea is, I'm very happy I found this move. Um, if queen takes A6, which probably looks like the most natural move, well, I can't. Queen G8 is going to be checkmate next move. So black took, and then I played queen c2. And so the idea is that I'm going to use this b6 pawn to promote. And now there's going to be no stalemate because black still has like lots of pawn moves. So I've eliminated the stalemate ideas, and even though I sacrificed a pawn, I still have one extra pawn, the b pawn, which is going to promote. So rook takes a3, anything loses over here, um, rook c1, rook e3, queen c8, uh, rook e8. But then after I just took and played b7, b8, rook c8, there's nothing that my opponent can do. So they took on b7 and I mated them. And so just just to recap what this position is, because black gave up their stalemate ideas when they tried to free their queen. And even though, so black before they already sacrificed they sacrificed their a4 pawn by playing a3, but even so let's go back over here. But even in a position like this, I was able to use my, so after my opponent sacrificed, I was able to realize that the knight was the more important piece on the board, so I took the knight, and then with my extra pawns, I played a6, which is the key move to stop any stalemate ideas and also to get myself a past b pawn. And I was able to win the game nicely in this position. So yeah, that's going to wrap up the knight e3 theory. It's a sideline. If your opponent doesn't know the theory, you can have some very interesting games. And even if they know the theory, there's still, in every line, there's still like tactical oversights and like very crazy computer lines that can be played. But knight e3 is probably not the move that you want to play if you're against a well-prepared opponent and you want to go for the advantage. Um, the rest of the videos on opening theory in this position will cover the main move, which I think is the best move in the position, knight c3. And this one offers like a lot of lines, and that white can, in several different ways that white can play for an advantage over here. Um, and yeah, knight c, and as you saw in the introduction video, all the example where like knight gains are knight c3, knight c6. That's the main opening of this position, and yeah, mostly it's rook hf1 is a popular move right now that's being played in the position, but the computer, there's so many computer lines. I could even go into like rook ac1, the computer likes, was just recommending to be, that I haven't really explored. There's just so much to see in this position. Uh, so yeah, I'll go over that. And I will look at knight e3, rook f8 theory, because I hadn't looked at that before, and and, it, and it's not so easy after knight d5. The computer realizes that it's not just a simple win for white, and so e6 is not forced. Though right now the computer is saying that white is better, but I think yeah, I guess knight c6 here, knight c7, rook takes a7, rook hc1, rook a8. Yeah, could very well have chances with a line like this. So yeah, we'd have to look into this. But yeah, there's so many opening lines. There's so many opening lines in this custom position. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed me covering knight e3 theory, and we'll see you back in the next video with knight c3. Thank you for watching.